In my session, we're going to be talking about 90% target language. We have to look at our target language kind of as a bullseye. And Ellen actually referenced one of my key points, and that's that we have to have really good, strong planning. When we're giving students target language, if we don't really focus our content into an aerodynamic structure, it's hard for them to be able to hit the bullseye, and the bullseye is to be able to communicate in our target language. We know that they come into class on that first day of level 1 and they're so excited and ready to learn to speak a language, and if we can focus our content, they start to see results really quickly where they feel like they can communicate, and they keep that excitement then throughout the year. So in my session, I'll be addressing all the 3 modes of communication. We'll look at interpretive mode and presentational mode, but tonight I'm just going to give you a peek of some of the things that we do interpersonally in our classroom. And the first one, we have to remember it's the hardest target to hit to get our students to speak interpersonally, because they have so many opportunities to present what they know to us. As teachers, that's something that has always come kind of naturally to me, to assess the students' performance at the end. But to get them talking to each other has been a little bit more of my challenge over the last few years. And one of the things that I have really enjoyed is to bring in actual authentic resources, human authentic resources. The picture that I have on this slide is of Ruben, and Ruben is Guatemalan, and our school supports him through a charity organization, and every fall he comes and speaks to our students, and he interacts then with the students in the target language, and it's so neat to see them prepare you know, what might we ask him about, and I give them some topics and they think it over, and then they just really get into this conversation with him when he's in the classroom. And it's different than talking to me. When they talk to me every day, they're not as excited as they are when they have somebody else coming in, and I notice that they really try hard to be impressive. When you bring somebody in that they don't know or that they want to impress, then all of a sudden their language is really beautiful and their sentences are longer and more flowing. And they do things that I'm always surprised about. And so that's one of my first things. If you know people, we all, as language teachers, we almost always have connections all over the world with people that we've toured with or people we studied with in school or where we studied abroad. Try and find ways to bring those people into your classroom, whether by Skype or actually face-to-face with your students. That audience is such an important key in getting your students excited about communicating in the language, more than just communicating with you. I also like to try and do some activities where my students are talking to each other about their own opinions on topics. And so this is one of the activities that I actually picked up from another conference, to use hula hoops to do things like Venn diagrams. And what I found is that if I come up with some ideas, this is actually during our biodiversity unit, and we had been talking about the watershed. We live in Carlisle, Illinois. We have a lake, and our watershed has some particular issues. And we studied through a tour guide in Panama. We studied the Panama Canal watershed, and we found that there were a lot of similarities in the 2 watersheds. And so my students' task was to take these different statements about a watershed and decide, did it describe the Carlisle Lake one, the Panama Canal one, or both? And so all of their discussion about where to put them had to be in Spanish, and it was great to hear them giving their opinions and defending their opinions, because at a level 3 and 4, that's what I want my students to be doing, to be able to support what they believe in and to have an opinion and keep it, and to say when they think something's right or wrong. One of the things people often ask about this activity is, how do you make sure that the conversation stays in target language? And I'll tell you the little tip that I have had a gold mine with last year is that so many of my students have cell phones, smartphones, and so I have them get out their iPhones and put them on the table and start the audio note app and record what they're saying, and then they send them to me in my email. And I never even have to look at them. Just knowing that those messages are going to be coming to me, they stay in the target language pretty much 100%. And I sometimes listen to little clips of them just to make sure I can come back and fool them with, oh, hey, I heard you say blah, blah, blah. That was a really good job. But that way I can go around to each group and be listening in and kind of participating in the conversations with them, but know that they're still on target even if I'm at the next group over. I also like to do centers. It was something that I never thought I would be able to do in my classroom because we are low on technology in my school district, but I've found some ways to put some tech together to do centers, and what that allows me to do is do a speaking center with my students. And so as they move from center to center, doing some kind of discovery and inquiry about the topic that we're getting ready to begin studying, I actually get a chance to sit down with small groups of students who come to my center, and we just talk about what they already know about that topic and what they think they might like to learn about the topic and any preconceived notions that they have about the topic. And it's really cool because I'm kind of, you know, 1-on-3, I don't get a big chance to do that very often. And I wondered if the students would try and avoid that center because they didn't want to have to do the talk to the teacher. But it's actually turned out to be one of the more popular ones. They fight a little bit over getting the time to come over and just chat. They feel like it's just a time for us to talk together. So those are just some ways, and tons more. I mean, I have dozens of ways that we can really look at using 90% target language in the classroom so that we can prepare our students to be proficient language speakers, even leaving high school, that they'll have some proficiency so they'll be confident and go on to be lifelong language learners.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that, and I'm sure we'll hear more at your presentation at the ICTFL Fall Conference. Anyone, remember that you can attend even if you're not in Illinois. And I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
One from Christy Placido, and she's asking, how do you prioritize or maximize the 10% non-target language? So I remember your session talks about the 90% we use the target language. What happens with the other 10?
I think that depends teacher to teacher, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. I know that a lot of teachers use that 10% target language to give instructions to their classroom or certain classroom commands and things that they don't want to spend their time teaching those students how to do that. Some people prefer to do different tasks in the classroom in English. In my classroom, I really use that 10% to establish meaning with the kids. Whatever new material we're doing, I'm trying to make sure that they understand what we're talking about and make sure they understand all of the new words and structures that we're using. And then as I'm confident that they understand those, I pull that scaffolding away, and then we move on to new structures. So mine is a very targeted 10% toward just establishing a meaning with the kids about what all of this new stuff is that we're working with and where we're going with it.
Great. And going back to the 90%, we have a question from Carol, and she says, how do we keep students with low literacy enrolled in our classes? How do we maintain 90% target language with pre or low literacy students?
That has been one of my missions for the last couple years. I want to see the kids that have traditionally dropped out of foreign language programs stay in the language program. And so that's why that 10% establishing meaning for me has been so important, because I've found that even at high school level, even in an educated community, I have very low literacy students that come into my classroom. I don't have any pre-literate, but I think that establishing meaning would be the same as with a low literacy student. I really have to keep going back to establish that meaning with them and then work with the structure very slowly with them. And they might need a little more scaffolding than the other students. And so I try to break up a lot like what Linda said. I have self-selected vocabulary. So my lowest literacy students are really working with just a core group of vocabulary and structures. And then there's kind of the impress me structures, and then there's the oh my gosh, you know, I'm a genius structures. And those kids can make their own list. As we go through any type of unit of study, they're taking the vocabulary that they think is the most interesting and meaningful. And I find that they reproduce it then in all of their speaking and writing assessments because it's meaningful to them. Like they chose that word to be part of their list. So they're a lot more successful incorporating the new vocabulary when they've had a little bit of ownership of it.